Not too long ago, I had that P2P Amps Uncle Larry 5E3 Deluxe Tribute Amp. Here's the real deal. Owner says from 55. He thinks it's a 5D. We'll check and see if it's a D or a C. But this is what they looked like. And let's turn this thing around and see what we got. Seemingly a replacement P12Q. Original speaker cable. The little metal tab's not on the frame of the speaker. I guess the replacement doesn't have the hole for that. It's had a replacement power cable. And he takes good care of his amps, this guy. So he keeps this on when it's not in use. I'm going to put this inside here because we're going to be using this. And let me get the rear cover off. This is a very valuable amp and it's in kind of fragile condition cosmetically. So I'm going to use the hand screwdriver to get all this stuff out instead of the power tool. So this is going to take a second. All right, should be getting there. I don't want to lose these, so I'm going to put them inside the cabinet. All right, so it's still got the Astrons, and it still has some original electrolytics, though the main filters have been changed out at some point. And the grounded power cable, it's just going to one of the grounds off the 6V6 to chassis. We can do a little bit better if necessary. I got a pair of electroharmonic 6V6s. Groove tubes labeled probably JJ or Sovtech there. And does he have a 12AY or 12AX7 in V1? He's got an AX, so asking a lot out of this little circuit. But the tube's probably okay. He says it's always been fine and it started making strange sounds. It could be any one of these Astrons. It could be this electrolytic here. Could be a number of things. It's probably not the Atoms, though these are from 2003. It has been a hot minute since they were changed out. The first dropper has been replaced with a metal oxide. The second dropper is original, and it looks a little discolored. Everything else in here looks pretty much stock, except for the cathode resistor here in the output. All right, let me power it on with the current limiter, just in case something is horrible. Still has the death cap, even though it's got a grounded power cable. All right, I'm giving it 114 volts as far as the variac goes, but I'm using the current limiter, so it's probably going to be like 105 initially. The current limiter does lower the voltage. Power switch feels a little funky. Like it's seen better days. It's really loose in a non-comforting way. I'll ask him if he'd like me to put a Carling in there. He can always have this one back for posterity. All right, the light is coming on. So fingers crossed that nothing wants to do a light show or let out the magic smoke. A little bit buzzy. Let's see, is there a tube chart in this thing? All right, I'll probably pop this up on the screen for you. I'm gonna look up the serial number and see if I can get a date code off this. Interesting that the still says 6SC7 on the preamp tubes. It's been handwritten in 12AX7 and 12AY7. It's a 5C3. If it's got a date code beyond that, I can't quite make it out. The pen's still there, but the pencil's faded. I'll check date codes on the pots. The owner says 55. Everything I'm seeing so far lines up with that. All right, I'll look through the schematics. Owner thought it might be a 5D. It does say 5C on the tube chart. And it does have the AY and AX, though this one has an AX as opposed to the 6SC7s or whatever. But according to what's inside the amplifier, aside from the tubes being different, it's a transition, but it's a 5C board and 5C layout with 5D tube types. So just wanted to know where I stood. Before I test it, see how it sounds with a guitar, I'm going to go through and measure all the resistors just to make sure that everything is likely to be working. If something is way off base, save some time. All right, the 5 meg resistors that are supposed to be in here are measuring like 10 meg. And I need to check the stripes on them to see if they are 5 megs that have drifted, which is not uncommon, or whether they use some 10 megs because that's what they had laying around. This is kind of an unusual circuit. It's got the grid leak bias on the first tube stage. They should be 275s for the input here. So all the resistors are pretty much within spec except for these on the input. Let me get in here and verify the stripes. All right, the resistors in question are these here. And according to the stripes, these are indeed 10 meg resistors versus the 5 meg shown on the schematic. 10 meg is an awful lot for a grid leak. Either one of those could be causing issues with the amp's performance, especially with the age. But other than those, everything else matches the schematic and is pretty much within tolerance. I suspect the problem's going to be this electrolytic and all these red astrons. These are just notorious for leaking. Maybe I'll lift them up at one end and we'll test for voltage leak. But first, let's see what it sounds like. I'm going to have to move the mic that I speak through closer to the front of the amp and turn the pre down. So if I need to say anything, I'll try to speak up, or I might end up having to put some text up on the screen. Let me get that set up. All right, let's see where we're at. Nice smooth sound. Now, I mentioned, what was that? Something may be mechanically loose in there. We'll run and poke at stuff in just a minute. I mentioned in the video on the 5E3, the P2P amps, Uncle Larry, that on the normal channel, the darker channel, the tone stack doesn't really do as much as you think, but it does roll off highs. So if I turn this up, this channel doesn't get... does get a bit more gain. And then it gets darker if I roll it all the way off. So if you have this thing turned up to get this channel real bright and you bring in some of this, the other channel, you get more distortion. Now that works the same on the 5E3, though the inputs work differently on this amp, the 5C, than they do on the 5E. Anyway, let's try that there bright channel. Now on this, as you turn it up, it will get brighter. And then it gets darker below noon. And it's really nice. On the 5C, this channel, the non-tone channel, is just so smooth. It's really fun to play. Definitely heard some glitches when I tapped on things. So I've got both channels up. I'll turn the tone down a little bit, and I'm going to poke around in here to see if I can make something act up, if there's a bad solder joint, etc., etc. All right, so there's definitely some noise. I think it might just be these caps. I think these caps may just have had it. There is definitely a reason that Leo stopped using the red astrons and stopped using the yellow astrons and went to the blue molded Ajax. They're just much better caps. I mean, that's not like just my opinion, man. That's objective reality. All right, so I don't trust this, but these I think are probably the fault. I'm going to power it off for just a second And I'm going to lift some of these up and we're going to measure for leakage. It's almost always there. Well, I've never had this happen before. The lead on this cap, as soon as I started to lift it up, just broke. It was this long, and this one came out without any problems, and I wasn't using any real force. I didn't have the camera set up in a good spot to record it, so I just had it off to the side, out of my way. But, I wasn't manhandling this. I'm very careful with these old amps. This lead was just physically fragile. That might be what we were hearing, or what the owner was experiencing. That might be what the owner was experiencing. Might have been that glitch that we heard. Anyway, I'm going to tap solder some 1 megs to ground from these points so we can measure and see how much DC is leaking through these old red Astrons. All right, let's power that back on, and then we'll measure voltage from here to ground. Without those resistors, you get crazy high voltages that would just be swinging all over the place. Without those resistors, you just be getting crazy high. Without these resistors, the voltage would be really high and artificially high and swinging all over the place. With those past the ground, there should be no DC there. Let's see if there is any, and if so, how much. So on the cap that was kind of defective, 253 millivolts. On the non-defective cap, 248 millivolts. So you may say, oh, it's only 250 millivolts. Shouldn't be any. So these caps are beginning to leak. Others will be as well. Astrons suck. Old electrolytics suck. I'll give the owner the option of recapping it entirely so that all the electrolytics in the amp are the same date. But that's what that probably is. And that cutout is very likely because this lead was brittle. Certainly has a lot of corrosion on it. It was hard to solder this resistor to it. So I'm going to stop here and let the owner see this video and answer any questions he has. We can get Jupiter caps that look like these if it's important to him. There are a lot of caps that sound exactly correct, even if they don't look the part. But if he wants to spend the money for the Jupiters that look like these, there are not that many caps in this amp. No problem for me to do that. Anyway, I think that's where we're going to stop at this point. The amp's going to be totally fine in the long run, and it's not a very long run, so that's nice. Thanks for watching.